Hi there. So today we're going to be doing a bit of tool rehab. It's very important that we keep and maintain the tools that we have currently, because we can't just go out and buy a new tool every time something breaks. So today I was getting ready to do some movement in the chicken coop, moving some of the hay and stuff around, and I picked up my pitchfork and this happened. So that's not good, but it is repairable. It is fixable. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a little bit of JB Weld, put it in this socket here, and push that back in here. But as I was looking at it, there's a few other things that need to be done. You may notice these tines. One of these things is not like the other. So this tine is really bent out of shape, and it looks like it's bent right about here. So we're going to try to heat that up with our trusty MAP gas, bend that back into shape. And I haven't been taking care of this tool like I should. So the handle is a little bit rougher than it should be. So I pulled out the boiled linseed oil, and we're going to sand this guy down and buff it out with some boiled linseed oil, and hopefully this is something that we're going to have for a long time to come. So let's get to it. So this is the first thing we're going to try to do. So I'm going to try to heat up this section right here with the MAP gas, and I don't want any of these other tines to be moving, so I'm going to wrap right down here with a cold, wet, damp cloth, because I don't want the heat to transfer past that point, and I'm going to wrap down here with another one so that I can grab it and actually manipulate it as I need to. But my plan is to just heat this up right here, and hopefully I can just put enough downward pressure on there as it heats up to actually bend it. Upon further consideration, I'm also going to get a hammer. Hammer time. Alright, let's see what we got here. So as you can see, it's not perfectly straight, but it's at least on the same plane with all the rest of them. It's not sticking out cattywampus to one side. It's not going to catch the ground as I try to move the fork across. So I'm happy enough with that, I guess. It's good enough. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start sanding. So I'm going to sand all the rust and stuff off of this. We don't want the epoxy to grab anything loose on the outside and grip to that, and then the first time I try to use it, it all just peels off like a layer of something, dead skin or something nasty. Anyway, and I'm also going to be having to do the same thing to the end of this. I'll get like a popsicle stick, wrap it in sandpaper, and run it down in there to clear any debris out of there. Then we'll mix up the epoxy, and we'll be well on our way. So I'm reasonably happy with that. We knocked off most of the loose particulate there. So the JB Weld should hold to that. And let's see what we can't do about this guy. All right. So that should be good enough in there. So the next thing I want to do, I'm going to do the handle last because I don't want to have to be working around that while I'm trying to beat the pitchfork in. So now we're going to mix up the JB Weld and get ready for the next big step. This stuff is you're supposed to do equal parts, and I'm going to be doing quite a bit actually. I'm probably going to use up most of these tubes. just because I want there to be an excess in there. I don't want there to be any air pockets. I want everything to be completely filled. Maybe even a little more than that. And if I use too much, JB Weld's still a lot cheaper than a whole new tool. But we're just using equal parts here. Okay, now we're going to try to get as much of this in there as possible. Without making a mess, which is going to be the hard part for me. Alright. I'm also going to put a little bit, just a small layer, on this guy. To make sure everything's sticking together. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. So now when we push this in, what we should see is a bunch of JB Weld start to come out the end, hopefully. So make sure you're putting your tools in the correct way. Once you do this, it ain't coming back out again. So I got it in most of the way. I just want to make sure it's really seated. Okay. And I'm reasonably certain that's never going to come out. Now, we need to worry about this handle. What I'm going to do with the handle here is hit it with a little bit of this 60 grit. And we're just going to move straight up to, is that the right way? No, it's not. Our 220 grit sandpaper, just to give it a little bit of a smoother surface. Then we're going to apply our boiled linseed oil. So let's get to that. This is a pretty good place to see it. We should be able to start to see the difference between the still good wood underneath there and that old gray dead wood. We're trying to get all to that new wood so that the fresh grain will take the linseed oil in a little bit better. So one thing I just noticed is we're having a little JB Weld coming out of the handle. So I might have to take a break on this for 10 or 20 minutes and just let that settle. Oh, it's already getting tacky, so that might be good then. But I'm gonna have to leave this mostly vertical while I finish off my sanding, because I don't want all the JB Weld to drip out of that hole that I just filled. Well, that turned off at some point, but we have a pretty nice looking handle now. It's smooth enough to allow me to slide up and down while I'm working, but it's just grippy enough that if I'm picking up something heavy with it, it's not going to fly out of my hand. So I'm going to go get some paper towels, and I'll show you how I do boiled linseed oil. So first, education time with Frank. What even is boiled linseed oil? Well, it's actually linseed oil. Linseed is also known as flaxseed. You may have used this in cooking some recipes even, or seasoning your cast iron. It's a really good seasoner for cast iron. However, boiled linseed oil is not. Boiled actually refers to all the chemical additives and dryers that have been added to the linseed oil to make it actually penetrate the wood deeper and dry faster. So it is one of my favorite wood finishes. It's really, really hardy, and it smells, I think it smells really, really nice. One of my favorite things is walking through old antique shops and smelling some of the tools that might have been treated with boiled linseed oil. smelling the wooden handles on them. It's not, you don't even have to seek it out necessarily. As soon as you walk in, you know. So we're just gonna rub this in. One coat actually is not gonna do it for us. We're gonna need many coats of this, probably at least 3 or 4. Not too many. But we're gonna need at least 3 or 4 coats of linseed oil over the course of the next couple of weeks. You can use this while it's still drying, but what I like to do with my tools is when they're in heavy use, add another coat about once a month. Add a real thick one right before winter, and in a year or so you're gonna have like a patina built up on this handle that just can't be beat. It'll protect them well, and it smells really nice. One thing I'm doing is I'm really wanting to make sure I get into all the crevasses. I don't want water seeping in somewhere and rotting out my wood. So I'm making sure both the ends here that I get a really good thick coat that's really soaked up into that, because there's metal under this plastic here that's really soaked up into there. That's going to do it for this coat. So I'm going to let that sit about 24 hours before I use it, just to allow it to dry out completely. Not completely, but most of the way anyway, at least where it's going to be usable and not tacky on my hands. Quick safety note, whatever cloth, in this case I'm just using paper towels, but whatever you're using to rub your linseed oil in, do not stack them up in a corner, don't crumple them up and put them to the side. As boiled linseed oil dries, it heats up. So if you have this all crumpled up, the center is going to get really hot and it can actually start a fire. So don't do that. And there we go. We have a functional tool again. So, like I said, gonna let all this dry for about 24 hours, then I can go clean the chicken coop. Lucky me.